Chapter 26. The Arrangement. The gigantic basilisk was releasing his killing intent at Solomon, like trying to challenge him for a deathmatch. He was a mythical rank creature and finally found a good opponent to fight.
See, that's why.
I don't know what creature is hiding inside your shadow as your familiar, but I'm certain it is able to fight on even terms with me. Even Stragobor won't be able to kill you if you used that creature in a fight against him. That's why I decided to hire you for this job in the first place. I have no intentions of killing you or discarding you after the job is done. Why make enemies when you can make friends? He said Solomon in a sadistic and evil tone. Khan thanked his previous life experiences at the moment. Because both the men sitting in front of him weren't some saints and upright people who cared about law and justice like their previous demeanor made them look like throughout the entire day. These were the real faces of both these elderly men. The elven mage looked no different than someone who'd kill anyone to hold his power and authority intact, and the elder man looked like someone who had bathed in a river of blood and grew numb to killings. If this was the gullible Elric of his past life, he would have believed that these men had a right cause and would have agreed to help them like some idiot main character of some munchkin manga and novel made for the teen audience where every elderly figure who helped the protagonist was a trustworthy and kind old man for some reason. This was the reason why they helped to get his name cleared of the murder accusation. They just wanted to have Khan owe them a favor and reel him in their plan.
Fine.
But I have my conditions. Said Khan, the businessman inside of him waking from a long slumber. I want all the resources you can provide me for the job. Your people will bring me the intel on the targets and I'll finish the job in any way I see fit. As for the remunerations, I want lots of high-grade monster cores, a lot of money and a small share in the bodies of rare monsters that have been hunted by adventurers and brought to the association for selling and salvaging. If there are 5, then I want 1. Said Khan as he put out the terms of their arrangement.
Fine.
We can manage that. But know that our deal is strictly based on what you deliver. If you fail in your tasks, then the deal is off. Said Solomon with a calculative expression on his face. Khan responded in hurry again, and one more thing.
Now what?
Aren't we already giving you a lot? Arkham asked furiously. To his loud voice, Khan replied gently. I want your strongest fighters in every job, let it be a swordsman, a mage or an assassin to train me.
What?
Why do you want to do that? Aren't you a swordsman? Asked Arkham.
Obviously.
It's to understand all my targets. Stragobor's people and the government officials you mentioned won't be some nobodies, right? I'll need to understand and know their weaknesses before I make a plan. Otherwise, not only would I fail the job, but I'll also lose my life. Then you can go and search around for another killer in whatever time you'll have by then. Khan said sarcastically. It sounds reasonable.
But we don't have time to waste.
I can only give you 1 week for your study of possible targets. And getting our top-ranked people in every job to train you will have to be done in secret as well. Otherwise, it'll raise unnecessary questions on why a newbie adventurer is receiving such favor. Said Solomon as he found Khan's method reliable. He figured that he wasn't dealing with an amateur here. Khan asking to study his targets by increasing his own experience in their classes meant that the young man knew how to plan his assassinations. Just like how he didn't leave a single trace after killing Stragobor's brother and men who came with him.
1 week is more than enough. But I need some advance first.
I also need to know who will be providing me with intel and blueprints for these targets. Khan said in a serious tone. What followed for the next hour was an elaborated plan for how to take down Stragobor's men and his connections in the government strategically without raising suspicion towards them. Here, there are 10,000 gold dramas and 200 B rank monster cores. This should be enough for advance, and some of the monster cores are of very high quality. I don't know why you even need these other than just money. This is just 20%, you'll get the rest as you start your job after a week. You kill, we pay accordingly. Said Solomon as he summoned a big pouch filled with gold coins and another with monster cores out of nowhere. There wasn't a spatial ring on him either. It was space magic. The elven mage was proficient in the rare space magic. This surprised Khan as another plan hatched in his mind.
A deal.
Let's shake on it. Said Khan as he shook both Solomon and Arkham's hands as a form of agreeing to the deal. As the night fell, Khan finally left the Adventurer Association and went back the Black Griffin Merchant Enterprise again. He felt that it was the best place for him to stay and deepen his relationship with one of the most prominent merchants in the entire city. As he reached the Enterprise building gates, he stopped his steps and spoke. You can let the president know that I won't betray or sell him out. So you lot better stop following me from now on. Or there won't be a head left on your shoulders. Khan said as he released his war dominance aura, and suddenly 3 assassins fell out of dark shadows from the nearby buildings under this immense pressure. Why did Khan accept the contract to kill these people? Obviously, it was to create connections with people who actually held authority in the city, and gain access to resources in large amount and establish himself as a prominent figure so that many doors could be opened for him just because of the fame he would gain later. There was no point in playing the underdog as long as his secrets regarding being the chosen hero of God of Darkness was kept under the rug. He needed everything he can get and as soon as he could. And he had to do it all by himself. Khan continued and greeted Ellenev in his office. After watching his sullen face, Khan got the gist of why the young merchant was unhappy. Khan threw the big pouch of coins in Ellenev's desk. I know I went a bit overboard, so this should be enough to minimize your losses, right? Consider the rest as repayment for saving your life, said Khan as he laid back on the sofa placed in the middle of the room.
Wait.
How did you get so much money? He asked Ellenev in a suspicious voice.
Nothing much.
Sold some of the top-grade monster cores I had on me and took some advance for a big job I was offered, said Khan as he relaxed on the comfortable sofa. He kept the sword on the side and said, when are we eating? I'm hungry. Ellenev suddenly went from his dejected expression to overjoyed as soon as he received the pouch and started counting the coins. His experience told him it was at least 8 to 10,000 gold coins.
Don't misunderstand me, Khan.
It's just that the price was too big for me to cover up, said Ellenev as he explained.
Yeah. No worries.
There shouldn't be any secrets between friends, right? Khan said as he gave a slight grin. Khan had already planned to deepen his relationship with the father and son duo as they could turn out useful in the future, so he had to start with the gullible son first. As he had dinner, Khan kept chatting about life experiences with Ellenev. As Khan was once 25 years old too, he knew enough topics that could get Ellenev's interests during their conversation. When Khan finally returned to his room again, he changed into nightclothes and jumped into the bed. Khan rested on the cushion and commanded the system.
System.
Give me Solomon and Arkham stats. Khan had shaken hands with both Solomon and Arkham for that very purpose. The system he had with him could only scan the body and their strength after making physical contact with the target. Following are the statistics for the individual named Arkham.
Name, Arkham Holland. Species, human. Job, magic swordsman.
Rank, peak grandmaster rank.
Level, 82.
Strength, 1,370. Agility, 930. Dexterity, 1,130. Defense, 860.
Mana, 440.
Following are the statistics on individual named Solomon.
Name, Solomon Elfenheim. Species, elf. Job, magician.
Rank, semi-saint rank.
Level, 85.
Strength, 320. Agility, 670. Dexterity, 1,080.
Defense, 540. Mana, 1,850.
Khan let out a surprised gasp. Semi-saint rank? Means Solomon was close to breakthrough beyond the Grandmaster rank? The middle-aged elf was much stronger than he thought. Khan realized that he was treading in murky waters today. He was pretty sure Stragaber was no weaker than Arkham either. If these people wanted to kill him, he'd be dead before he could even react. If not for Rudra being present inside his shadow, he would not even walk out alive from Association Building had he chosen to refuse the contract from Solomon and Arkham. Khan took out the top-grade monster cores and chomped down on them one by one as he was in dire need to raise his strength levels if he wanted to protect himself. Rudra was his hidden card, but he couldn't reveal him to anyone. Plus there would be very few places where he could release the basilisk out of his shadow without causing massive destruction to the surrounding. From tomorrow, I'll perfect all of my combat skills and rank as much as I can. I can't be dependent on luck or some plot armor to always save me. Compared to these people, I'm still an ant, said Khan as he continued to eat up the cores.
Power.
I need more power. Chapter 27, Power Boost. Morning arose and Khan woke up from his fulfilling slumber. Unlike his previous life, he didn't get any dreams about how his life would be different and what kind of love life he wanted. Rather, he would dream about how he rose in strength and sit atop this entire world, beneath no one, not even the gods. System, tell me my current stats. Khan commanded the system since he ate around 50 monster cores before falling asleep. Thanks to his ability absorption divine ability he chose before, all the cores he ate would be directly absorbed in his body without any wastage or adversely affecting his physique. As per the knowledge he gained from reading books in the city library, People in this world couldn't directly just swallow mana ores or monster cores to increase their physical or magical strength and capacity. Even the most sensitive beings to magic such as elves and angels had to dilute the cores and magical elements in them first and then absorb them over a long time. Even absorbing a high-grade core would take them 2 to 3 weeks, that too if they barely took any breaks. And that is why very few people had incredibly stronger physiques or magical abilities, as gaining strength in this world needed a lot of resources as well as time. Elves lived around 500 years if they didn't get killed or died because of some disease, and angels lived up to 2,000 years. Even the most ancient dragons couldn't live past 4 to 5,000 years. The longer you lived and the more resources you had, the stronger you'll become. That's how the natural law of gaining strength worked here. Even amongst the chosen heroes, if nobody else picked the ability absorption divine ability as Khan did, then his ability to absorb these monster cores would be the highest among all the living creatures in this world. Naturally, many beings currently surpassed Khan by a huge margin, but Khan had far more potential than all of them. Host attributes and skills are as follows.
Name Khan host. Species, human. Level, 42.
Strength, 164. Agility, 126. Dexterity, 122.
Defense, 94. Mana, 252.
Divine abilities, ability absorption, dimensional law, synthesis.
Blessings. War dominance, stage 1.
Weapon mastery, master rank.
Combat Technikvis Mastery, master rank.
Survival intent, stage 1. Berserk god mode, 5 times the physical strength.
War Deity Body stage 2.
Gifts, all languages knowledge known to the war deity. Physical abilities. Ripper claws, combination of alpha wolf's claws and blue lion's claws.
Alpha wolf's howl.
Side hopper, combination of sprinter and long stride.
Hunter's intent. Venom Acid.
Poison immunity, grandmaster rank.
Somir scale body.
Executioner's gaze. Magical skills.
Fireball. Stealth.
Note, some low-grade abilities and skills have been merged under high-grade ones the host currently possesses, and some have been discarded as they no longer have any use to the host. 7 levels. Khan remembered being level 35 just yesterday. Eating 50 high-grade B rank cores raised his level by 7 levels. Even his strength had become nearly twice than before. Khan realized that as your levels rose, the attributes would raise by a big margin, more with each level. Like if his stats had 20 points, after his level rose, the increase would be by 30 to 40 points instead of 20. As his level increases, so will the extra points he'd get.
Good.
This will make the training and my survival a bit easier, said Khan, and went to take a bath. Khan left in a hurry in the early morning. Instead of going to Adventurer Association, Khan went towards the north gate of the city. This part of the city was mainly known for its entertainment area, like how Earth had red light areas in the city known for pubs, bars and strip clubs. Khan went to one of the most crowded restaurants in this area, called the Golden Crow. He waited on a table that was unoccupied as he drank some herbal tea. Unlike Earth, there was no such thing as coffee in Rocco's empire as per his current knowledge. But the majority of the population preferred herbal tea instead. Khan could feel the Asian aesthetics in the building architecture and cuisine. I wonder if any one of chosen heroes was an Asian from Earth who introduced his or her culture, and now residents of this world created a different one based on it.
No complaints though.
This is perfect for the morning, Khan said as he sipped the aromatic tea bit by bit in a black clay cup. Just then, a slim figure under black cloak came towards Khan's table and sat next to him. You're earlier than expected, said Khan as he glanced at the hooded figure.
I'm a professional.
We don't delay our tasks. If you're done, let's leave quickly. I have a perfect place to train you, said the cloaked figure, and finally took out his hood. Khan was a little bit surprised to see the person but didn't show it on his face. The person next to him was a snakekin. His body was completely similar to a snake and his hands and legs were covered in reptile-like skin. The greenish hue in the skin color gave this person an appearance similar to a forest snake. The person even had a tongue of a snake which came out of his mouth every 5th second.
Fine. Let's go.
I'm in a hurry as well. We'll only get today to learn as much as I can, said Khan, and followed after the snakekin. After half an hour, they reached a desolate area where the houses were basically empty and near to falling in the ground. This is one of the oldest parts of the entire city. It used to be one of the most important areas of the city a few decades ago before the war between different powers and gangs destroyed it as collateral damage. And nobody tried to rebuild it as well. So it became the best area for people in our line of work to practice our skills, explained the Snakekin as he introduced Khan to their training grounds. I want you to train me in 2 ways. One where you attack me with your assassin skills and techniques as I try to defend against them, and other where I make attempts on you using the skills you'll teach me. I want to understand both sides of the battle," said Khan. "He already spoken like a true assassin. Our job needs the understanding of the surrounding, our target, and their weaknesses. We don't do much damage even with high-grade weapons, but rather our hiding skills and that one final hit when we show ourselves takes all the work," said the Snakekin. The Snakekin was a professional assassin, and somehow Solomon had managed to have him train Khan after their yesterday's planning and agreement. Throughout their entire time during the training, the Snakekin taught Khan how to adjust himself in the surroundings so well that not just the target but also anyone present around them wouldn't notice Khan or his presence at all. Since Khan had already acquired the stealth ability after killing one of the people that came with Ilya to kill him, he was already a step ahead compared to an amateur. By the end of the day, Khan, who already had the weapon mastery and combat techniques mastery blessings, had already raised his efficiency and also learned the ability called concealment. The Snakekin was left awestruck after he saw Khan executing this ability to a level that exceeded normal level assassins who were in the profession for some time. Compared to them, Khan not only learned it in just 4 to 5 hours but also improved in it at a drastic pace. Unlike stealth ability, which lets the assassins become invisible for a short time, concealment ability helped one to merge in the surrounding area as if you were always a part of it. The Snakekin's expression was no different than Arkham's when he fought Khan during the assessment test and found his talent in swordsmanship.
Ta prodigy.
I found a prodigy. Why is this guy wasting his talent on swords? He can easily become one of the best assassins in the entire city with enough training and experience, thought the Snakekin as he regretted watching Khan go after their training. Khan was satisfied to see his weapon mastery for daggers reaching 45% at master rank and his stealth and concealment skills reaching 70% and 53% of master rank respectively. This was just 1-day training, but he already reaped the benefits of an entire month's training because he learned from one of the top experts. Just like the fight with Arkham, Khan kept learning and perfecting his assassination skills by making critical attacks whenever he found the perfect chance, and his patience to wait for a perfect opportunity was very commendable as well. Now all he needed was to kill some assassins in real battle and absorb their abilities to create his new skills and raise the proficiency in the ones he already had. The upcoming week would be nothing but a golden fruit of knowledge he'd get to eat and raise his skills and knowledge in all the fighting-related jobs and professions. Khan knew if not for the excuse he made for learning his targets and their weaknesses, Khan would never get to learn from true professionals like the Snakekin he met today. It was Solomon and Arkham pulling their connections and a huge amount of money to get these people to train him, all for the sake of keeping their current power and authority to themselves. Khan was sure that the Snakekin would straight away go to report about today's training to Solomon and Arkham as a way to keep an eye on him and his part in their deal. And so will the other trainers he'll meet in the upcoming days. But at the end of the day, it was Khan who was getting a big haul and benefited the most. Let's see who's using who, spoke Khan to himself and smirked as he looked forward towards the upcoming days. Chapter 28, First Target. For the following days, Khan received training and combat experience from one of the most elite fighters in all different professions. Let it be archers or magicians, Khan not only learned a few of their core techniques and spells, he also excelled at them by a huge margin compared to others who would usually take months to reach that level. All his trainers left with their jaws dropping on the ground, every single one of them not believing the talent this young man had in their respective fields. And after 1 week of repeated training sessions, Khan was finally done in being proficient in them and reaching more than 50% mastery in these skills, spells, and combat techniques. The current Khan would be able to use any weapon belonging to any class and different spells and combat techniques unique to these classes without any problem. This left a sour taste in all his trainers who thought he was wasting his God-gifted talent by focusing on swordsmanship instead. Few of them even offering him to become their disciple. But Khan refused all of them. The agreed date of the first week was over and the days of his hunting began from today. Khan was sipping some morning herbal tea inside the Golden Crow restaurant as by now, he too was addicted to this aromatic and soul-soothing tea. Today, he was going to receive a detailed report on all his targets, their routines and the best locations to carry out the assassinations as agreed during their initial planning. Khan was to get familiar with different professions and their weaknesses, and Solomon and Arkham's people were to gather more detailed and sure-shot intel on all of their potential targets. As Khan was basking in the delicious taste of the tea, a slim elven archer sat across the opposite side of the table. He didn't make any greetings and ordered some breakfast. Both he and Khan didn't speak a word to each other either. If anyone looked at them, they'd think that these two were nothing but strangers to each other. As the elven archer finished his breakfast, he suddenly took out a small book and passed it to Khan from under the table, completely hidden from everyone's eyes. The elf gave a slight nod and left the place in a hurry. Khan took the small book and placed it in his space ring. Soon, Khan left for the Adventure Association, and after he finally reached there, he registered himself for the dungeon exploration list and paid a small fee for buying a dungeon pass. Unlike many novels and mangas he read in his previous life, the dungeons in Rocco's empire were monitored by both the Adventure Association and the military platoons stationed close to these dungeons in case of a monster tide occurred. They will be the first line of defense. The dungeon passes were used as permission to explore and also to keep a record of all the people entering the dungeons in case they went missing or needed reinforcement during life and death situations. It was also to stop the unregulated and unrecorded flow of resources adventurers gain from these dungeons. Khan had 3 objectives for his dungeon visit today. The first was obviously to hunt monsters and absorb their abilities. Second was to use this opportunity to increase his combat experience and improve his combat mastery using the different techniques he had learned in the past week. Third was to deliver upon his first target mentioned inside the small book. On his way to the closest dungeon, which was barely 5 kilometers away from the city, Khan went to a merchant shop and bought some smoke bombs and tear gas bombs. Normally, adventurers used it to hunt down groups of low-level monsters that traveled in groups. But Khan was going to use them for some other purpose. He also bought a black cloak to hide in the crowd and to avoid the eyes of fellow adventurers. When Khan finally reached the closest dungeon towards the city named the Bromner Dungeon, he entered after showing his pass. Surprisingly, he wasn't the only one entering while wearing a black cloak. There were many individuals who did the same. Out of 10, at least 2 would be wearing black cloaks as far as Khan could see. Many trying to hide their identities.
Good for me.
This way, no one would be able to link me to the incident either, thought Khan as he entered the gigantic cave-like door to the dungeon that was filled with plenty of adventurers going in and out like ants gathering around sugar. Khan had placed his longsword inside the space ring and currently had a normal-looking bow on his back with a quiver full of arrows. He was entering the dungeon as an archer this time. After entering the first floor, Khan didn't waste time wandering around and asked a nearby adventurer about the directions towards the 9th floor. The first 2 floors were flooded with people, and only from the 3rd floor did the real battles begin. Khan kept descending the downstairs and walked nearly a few miles down the ground to finally reach the 9th floor door. As the floor level increased, the stronger monsters and creatures would one face. After the 7th floor, no one would dare venture further without a team of allies. So watching a lone archer going below the 7th floor surprised many, but it was still acceptable for them as there were always risk-takers. Here, you were responsible for your own life. And nobody would care if you lived or died in this place. Each floor in these dungeons covered the area of a big town having perimeters of around 6 to 8 kilometers on average. Here, many different monster species lived and hunted for resources. And so did the adventurers. To the residents of these dungeons, any outsider would be no different than food, so they attacked these adventurers at the first sight. The 9th floor was an area of crevices and withered trees. This floor was a hunting ground for many big adventurer teams, and the residents of this floor being none other than kobolds. These monsters had very sensitive noses and hearing, so they were very hard to hunt in a group unless you had a bigger group of your own.
Finally. I'm here.
Now, where are those bastards? He spoke Khan to himself. He started looking around for groups of people. After walking for more than 10 minutes, Khan finally found a group of more than 20 adventurers full of mixed-race people and humans trying to fight off against a pack of kobolds. All these people had an emblem on their chest, the emblem indicating the adventurer team he had seen before. This was his first target, as the book had provided him intel on the Groundhog Adventurer Team. From the intel he received, the Groundhog Adventurer Team had more than 400 members. Stragaber being their leader and his family, who had a rich background funding the whole team. There were dozens of groups like the one before Khan, sent to dungeons to hunt for monsters, raw materials and monster cores and later be sold in the market. In other words, this group was no different than workers farming for resources and later give it all to their bosses. Khan maintained a kilometer distance from this group and activated his hunter intent skill, which let him gauge the strength of his targets about whether they were stronger than him or not. This ability also had a very long reach and was no different than a filter system for Khan. The strongest among them seems like between level 32 to 35. But the numbers are too big for me to hunt alone. Also, bringing all of their attention towards a single target won't be easy. If I want to kill them efficiently without any fail, I need to give them a big target. Khan thought to himself as a plan hatched in his mind. Khan ran amongst the withered trees and went far away from the Groundhog Adventurer team members. Since he lacked numbers, he would use outside help. Not only was he planning to overcome his disadvantage with numbers, he was going to use the oldest and yet most efficient battle strategy in the book. Khan let out an evil grin as he finalized his plan. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
Chapter 29. Let them fight.
Continuous battles kept happening over different parts of the ninth dungeon floor. There was no sun or source of light inside the dungeon, but somehow, Khan could see a bright sky above his head. Naturally, this had something to do with the natural construction or magic formation that had formed the dungeon in the first place. The light outside of the dungeon was brought to each floor, and the intensity was no different than normal sunlight outside of the dungeon. Khan kept running without causing too many noticeable noises through the withered tree lines. He had seen some group of kobolds, but they were either too big or too small than what he needed. Finally, he found a group of 18 kobolds who had just finished off killing an adventure team and were looting out the remains, while some from the group started ripping off the flesh out of the dead bodies and chomping on the juicy and bloody meat of these adventurers. Unlike werewolves, kobolds not only hunted with their claws and jaws, they also used weapons like wooden spears/poles, swords and bows. The majority even wore clothes that covered their private parts. Only a group of experienced adventurers with the same number as the kobolds could take them head-on. From what Khan saw, the group of adventurers that laid dead on the ground wasn't one of such teams. Not only did they lack numbers, but also their team composition was out of the norm. Too many physical class and damage dealer class people, only 2 mages and 1 archer in the group. This was nothing but a ragtag bunch of hot-headed morons who came to the dungeons thinking they could conquer the floor with their measly strength.
Idiots.
There are other ways to make money without dying. Why come here if you're not strong enough to protect yourself?
Khan spoke to himself.
Khan was already used to hunting wild monsters and beasts in the forest he was thrown into by God of Darkness. So this wasn't his first rodeo. Khan silently kept walking towards the group of kobolds while hiding himself behind the tree branches and bushes. The group was salvaging the gears and meat from the dead adventurers. He knocked an arrow on his normal bow which he bought for cheap from a shop. He was around 300 meters from the group and just in his bow's attack range. Aiming at one of the kobolds who was in a group of 3 and quickly shot an arrow.
Swish.
The arrow pierced the kobold's head, killing it instantly on the spot. His current weapon mastery for bows was only 59% at master rank, but it was still enough for him to make accurate and precise attacks. As soon as the kobold fell on the ground, the remaining kobolds were alerted.
Howl.
The kobolds howled and alerted their subordinates. The whole group quickly getting their guard up and looking for the attacker. "A time for the second arrow," said Khan and shot another arrow in the middle of the group. The first was to get their attention, and the second was to let them know about his location. As soon as the kobolds sensed the direction of the incoming arrows, they charged towards Khan's location with all their weapons in their hands. Khan waited till the group could see him and started running in the direction he came from. For the next 20 minutes, the group of kobolds kept running after Khan as if all they wanted was his death. Khan occasionally shot out arrows and killed a couple of their subordinates to fume their anger even more. Running away from this group without getting caught was no big deal for Khan, who had both sprinter and lunge ability, which would always keep him one step ahead of the group. He also made sure that the group followed him without coming across any other group of kobolds or another adventurer team. Otherwise, it would foil his plans. Finally, when he reached around a kilometer away from the place where the group of 20-plus groundhog adventurer team members were fighting, he raised his speed to the fullest and disappeared from the sight of these kobolds using side hopper ability. Khan saw the people of the groundhog adventurer team were still at the same place. Their battle seemed to be over long ago, and now they were just harvesting the kobolds for their cores, claws and skin. Many of them simply resting, while few keeping a lookout. Their losses seemed negligible, while the kobold group was completely wiped out. Khan quickly ran back to the group of kobolds he brought along and shot arrows at them again, luring them in his direction as he ran towards the adventurer team. As soon as he reached 200 meters from the group, Khan used side hopper and disappeared again from their sight. From the dense bushes, he shouted very loudly,
There are kobolds.
"Everyone get ready to fight." Khan quickly ran away from the place and hid among the tree branches. Enemy attack," shouted some of the team members of the adventurer team, and everyone was quickly alerted. They were all experienced people, so they quickly got into a formation ready to defend against an ambush. Who was the guy that just shouted? Didn't feel like I heard that voice before. Someone of the group softly asked. But just then, the group of kobolds finally reached close to the adventurers, and by instinct, they charged at the defending side. Khan, who was now standing on a thick tree branch far away and watching the show side in relief. Finally, all the efforts are paying off. Nothing personal, guys. It's just business," said Khan as he relaxed his back against the tree trunk. What followed was another gory battle between the adventurers and kobolds, even far bloodier than the previous group these kobolds had killed. Thanks to their experience in working together, the adventurers defended themselves against this sudden attack, only suffering 2 casualties at the beginning of the battle. But the kobolds were no different than these adventurers. They hunted in packs and their disposition was made to hunt in a group. Their understanding and teamwork far exceeded the opposition. Besides, they were far more vicious with their attacks and many were stronger than the adventurer team members. Skulls and bones were broken, cut down and blood was sprayed on the ground as both sides ferociously fighting to kill their enemies. Khan, who was the cause of this all, was simply studying the battle and strategies both sides were employing as time went on. His understanding of battle tactics increasing little by little. There was a reason why Khan chose to use the Kobold group to pit against the Groundhog adventurer team members. The primary reason being that he was simply lacking in numbers. And even though he was strong, he couldn't take down all these people even with Omega on his side. Releasing Rudra here was also not a good idea either. These weren't some mindless monsters but a group of experienced people who also knew how to quickly respond to sudden ambushes and adapt to the situation very quickly. Some could manage to run away to tell the tale, so that wasn't the best choice. The secondary reason is to avoid causing suspicion of an assassination attempt. Plenty of people died in the hands of kobolds on this floor, so it wouldn't be a surprise to see another group fallen to these monsters. Soon, the battle came to an impasse. Both sides left with barely 6 to 7 members, rest going to eternal sleep while lying on the ground in their own blood and intestines. Both sides were constantly looking for an opportunity to attack while defending themselves. Khan, who saw this from the tree he was standing on, finally decided to interfere. He knew this would eventually happen, so he wasn't surprised at all. Omega, come out," said Khan, and the dire wolf jumped out of his shadow. Khan took out the smoke and tear gas bombs he bought with him and silently approached the battlefield. Since everyone was fighting for their lives, neither side noticed or sensed his presence.
The usual plan.
"Attack from the other side as soon as I throw the bombs," said Khan, and Omega nodded in response. Their teamwork was already on an expert level. Khan activated stealth and turned invisible. He silently walked behind the adventurer team and threw the smoke bombs and tear gas bombs in between the battlefield where the majority of the fighters were in a neck-to-neck battle.
What the fuck?
"Who's that?" shouted a woman among the group as the smoke filled the battlefield. Khan activated his war dominance and ripper claws and started the bloodbath. This time, he was hunting both people and monsters together. His pressure filled the entire place, making it hard to even breathe for everyone present on the scene. What followed was a one-sided massacre. Khan used Sidehopper from time to time, and each time he appeared, a body would fall on the ground as his ripper claws chopped their heads and torso in two. Khan had thrown the smoke bomb on the adventurer's side, while the tear gas bomb on Kobold's side to use it the most effectively on both opponents. Both sides were already weaker than him, and after putting them into a disarray, Khan and Omega did not have any problems taking out all the enemies. With no chance to fight back, in just a few minutes, only a hooded man with a bow on his back and a giant black dire wolf, both of whom were completely drenched in blood, remained on the battlefield.
Well.
Time to rob the dead. Chapter 30, New Teammates. As the battle ended, a dreary scene of the blood and flesh torn and splattered on the ground was revealed. The bowman and the dire wolf started to pillage the bodies of the dead without showing any hints of regret, as if they were completely numb to killing. Khan was no longer a man from Earth who would be disturbed by killing someone or try to use the pretense of moral code or right cause to not kill people when it suited him and when it didn't. He wasn't a hypocrite who would try to justify his acts or look for reasoning before he had to kill someone. He had killed so many dangerous and vicious monsters in the forest that he was practically comparable to a veteran hunter who had experienced so much that the sight and smell of the blood no longer bothered him. And after he absorbed the Mother Somir's core and also inherited its will, his disposition was no longer that of a normal human. He simply accepted that given different circumstances, both the people he just killed and the kobold monster he lured here to slaughter would not even bat an eye if they had a chance to kill him. Some would even torture him to death if the roles were switched. So there was no need to feel sorry for someone who wouldn't think too much about the value of life in the first place. Khan absorbed the abilities of all the dead bodies lying in front of him one by one and cut out cores from the monsters. As for the Groundhog Adventurers team members who were part of his contract, he simply took out their badges and put them in his space ring. He needed the proof of the kills to receive his pay. System, show me the list of abilities and skills I just gained just now," said Khan, and the system notified him with the list. The host has acquired the following new abilities and skills: Water Spear,
Knight's Taunt, Shield Bash, Wind Slash, Wind Blade, Headshot,
Charged Arrow,
Arrow Volley, Archer's Sight, Heal, Rank C,
Protection Barrier,
Debuff Dispel,
Magic Sense,
Templar's Charge, Templar's Will, Defense Fortitude, Shadow Strike, Lacerate, Backstab, Lockpick, Kobold's Howl, Pack Sense, Pack Hunting Buff,
The system finally stopped after giving a list of abilities Khan had just acquired using his ability Absorption Divine Ability. This cheered up Khan as he was indeed lacking many abilities and magical skills in his holster. Majority till now being related to hunting monsters in the forest only. And out of them, only 2 to 3 were useful to the current Khan. So this was a pleasant surprise for him in a way. System, show me the list of useful abilities and skills I can create using Synthesis Divine Ability. Said Khan and waited for the system to reply. Host can create the following abilities and skills with the ones currently the host possesses. The system then started giving him multiple and variety of skills he could create using the abilities he already had and gained just now, filling his head with all the information about the abilities with their effects and uses. Khan started processing all the information and decided to judge the usefulness of all the new merged abilities and skills. He wasn't an idiot to combine them all for no reason. He wasn't even sure if there was a limit to the number of abilities and skills he was allowed to merge together. And there was no point in creating the ones he won't be needing in the majority of scenarios, as they would simply rust inside the inventory, metaphorically. Also, these abilities would need time and practicing and maybe require him to absorb abilities and resources to upgrade and improve them. That would be a waste of time as well. So the most sensible choice was to create abilities and skills that could be extremely useful and had the potential to become one of his hidden cards. Among the list, he found 2 merged abilities that were also high rank and could be upgraded in the future. Mind Link, Rank B, upgradable. Allows the host to create a soul connection to multiple subordinates and see their surrounding via a shared vision. The host can also command them telepathically to perform a task or an action. The current range of this ability is a 5-kilometer radius from the host's location. This ability was truly useful for Khan if he wanted to hunt, gather intel, or keep a lookout. His subordinates could warn him about an incoming enemy or an ambush. He could also send them to do some reconnaissance on the people or monsters he wanted to kill, and even send them to places he couldn't reach or tell them to do something when he was under the public eye. Khan then moved to the second merged ability. Mind Transfer, Rank C, upgradable. Allows the host to have full control of one subordinate and its body for 1 hour. However, the original body of the host will be put in stasis when the ability is activated. The first ability was simply too convenient for Khan, as he would be needing a lot of subordinates sooner or later. And in that case, having a deepened mind connection with them would allow him to carry a group battle more efficiently. The second merged ability was similar to the first, but unlike the former, it allowed him to completely control a subordinate for an hour. This too was useful if he wanted to not take any risks while doing something where he could die and just use a subordinate as a suicide bomber in case there was a chance to get caught. Khan was certain that he gained this ability from the group of kobolds, as they were indeed the type of monsters who spent their lives hunting in groups. So maybe this was some rare passive ability he accidentally gained. The adventurers also gave him plenty of useful abilities and occupation-exclusive skills. But Khan decided to experiment on them later, when he had the time. Merge the skills. Khan commanded the system, and soon a familiar feeling of learning new abilities flew in this body, as if he had spent years on creating it. He quickly got familiarized with it in a minute. But because of these two newly merged abilities, another door was open for Khan, which made him rethink his choices.
Khan then thought of a plan.
He had to spend almost an hour and a half just to plan and kill these people using a group of kobolds to tire them out in a battle and whittle down their numbers. What if he had a similar task in the future and had to kill a group just like this one? Where will he find extra help when having a disadvantage in numbers? Things won't go in his favor at all. So there was no other option than to create a small army of his own. He didn't feel like leaving the dead bodies to let others know that these people died in a battle against kobolds anymore. Simply because there wasn't a need to leave them as proof. Missing people also counted as dead too. All the adventurers were above level 30, and some of the kobolds were even level 37. He won't find such a favorable situation again where everything went according to his plan and he successfully completed the kill list. Khan weighed the pros and cons in his mind and decided that it was a better choice to use the dead bodies that were lying in front of him to create new subordinates and even experiment on a few to create some different or even higher version of their species. He ordered Omega to not eat out the remains and started using Synthesis Divine Ability on all different types of adventurers. To gain the maximum results, he used the high-grade monster cores during the synthesis process, which were given to him by Solomon as an advance for the job. There were more coming into his pockets, so Khan found this as a worthy investment. And he wasn't a fool to randomly merge the bodies together. Khan chose the specimens based on their profession and their class, such as Knights and Templars under physical melee class and mages and conjurers in long-range magical class. In half an hour, Khan was done merging all the dead bodies together and gained 6 new subordinates. 6 figures who were wearing completely black clothes, armors and robes that were once part of the original bodies and now turned black, holding weapons of their respective classes, and with some very noticeable changes happened to them. On top of that, since Khan used 2 to 3 high-grade monster cores during synthesis, all of these new subordinates had unlocked the evolution skill just like Omega and Rudra had when they were created. A guardian knight, a rogue, an enchanter, a priest, a ranger, and finally a berserker. All of these were the combination of 2 different job classes and had merged under the synthesis divine ability, so they also inherited the core abilities of both the classes with the unique abilities of their newly created class. Khan named these 6 as 6 generals, already having plans to make them incredibly stronger in the future if he had the opportunity. If from now on your names are Blackwell, Ronan, Cyril, Armin, Oliver, and Jugram, said Khan as he named his new subordinates with creative names which fitted their classes and appearance respectively, instantly raising their loyalty towards him by 50%. And all of them were level 40 as both the original bodies were at least level 30. Khan then saw Omega looking at him with indignation as if he felt left out and forgotten. Khan gently patted the dire wolf's head and smiled. Don't worry, I still have different plans for you," said Khan as he gazed at the bodies of the kobolds lying next to him. He let out a devilish smirk and spoke. Let's see who we get next."